So I wanted to talk because it is Zion Adar, and I'm very honored and lucky to share my birthday with Moshe Rabbeinu. His birthday famously is on the 7th of Adar, and there's some debate with Moshe if he was born in Adar Rishon, the first Adar, or Adar Sheni, the second Rishon, the second Adar. And did he die in the first Adar or did he die in the second Adar? So there's opinions that say all of the above, but we know that he was born and he died on the same day. So I guess that both dates are acknowledged. Both dates are acknowledged somewhat. And people, there's lighting a candle to do for the Yortzeit of Moshe. And I think, if I remember correctly from last year, learning about Adar, 7th of Adar, Esther Hamalka's birthday is also on the 7th of Adar. So it's a beautiful, special day to have a birthday on. So I'll start off, given that it's my birthday, and it's something that we say that on a birthday a person has the capacity to give blessings. So I want to bless all of us that we should use our Torah learning to enable us to come closer to Hashem and to feel the oneness of the creation that we speak about, and we have spoken a lot about. The purpose of our creation is to make a dira b'tachtonim, to bring God's presence into the physical world. And I bless us all that we should see God in the world and bring his presence, his Shekhinah, into the world. And part of that is seeing the connectedness of all of us to each other, of the spiritual to the physical, of us and the spiritual reality should become real for us, and we should feel the oneness of God and the oneness of our own connection to that. That's a bracha that I'm giving to all of us. And it is kind of weird because I'm turning 59, which means I'm moving into my 60th year. And it's kind of funny because I feel like I'm 35. So that's like weird. How is it that I'm, entering into my 60th? It's kind of crazy. And I was looking for a cleaning lady, and somebody that I was talking to, she said that she has this woman for me that can come work, and she's 58. And I thought in my head, wow, that's kind of old for a cleaning lady. And it took me a couple minutes for me to realize that I'm 58 myself. So while I was thinking that, wow, that's kind of old, it took me a few minutes to realize that, in fact, maybe it's not really that old after all. But anyway, so I bless all of us to feel connected to the oneness and feel connected to Hashem's presence in our world. And so that's my blessing to everyone. And I felt that I wanted to talk a little bit more about the quality of Adar, even though we're already in the second part of this 2-month spectacular 2-month opportunity of working on these qualities of Adar. But I felt like there were a lot of things that we still hadn't really got to, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about it. So there's an interesting sefer that I was gifted with many, many years ago, and it's called The 12 Dimensions of Israel. And it's written by a woman whose name is Nechama Sarah Nadborny. Actually, I think she goes by a different name. I think this is her maiden name. And one of my friends gave me this book many, many years ago when I visited Sfat. And then I never heard about this author again. I think I found a second book of hers, and I didn't hear of her. She sort of disappeared. And then a couple years ago, she reappeared and actually came to my house. I don't know if anyone came. she does artwork, and we sold paintings of her house. I think the night she came, we had a tremendous snowstorm, and we had a very beautiful learning with her. And she makes paintings of each of the months, and she also talks about the quality of the months. The way the book is she wrote it many years ago. Now she's married. She wrote it many years ago when she was single and living in Eretz Israel, where she still lives now. And she went hiking and would go through the land of Israel to each portion of the land that when Yaakov gave his blessings, he gave a different portion of land to every one of the 12 sons. And so each portion of land is connected to one of the tribes of Israel. And so she would be hiking and meditating in each portion of the land as she traveled through the land of Israel, trying to connect to the essence of the tribe and journaling about her experiences and how her experiences in her hiking and experiencing of the land, how it connected to the consciousness of each particular tribe and their qualities. So Adar is connected to the tribe of Naftali, and the part of the land of Israel that Naftali has his portion of land assigned was the area around Meron. So Meron, just outside of Sfat. I'm not sure if his chelik includes Sfat, but it's definitely Meron. And we know that Meron is the burial place of Shimon bar Yochai, and it's also the place where Shimon bar Yochai and his son Elazar, when they were hiding from the Romans, and it's a famous story that 3 rabbis were talking at the time of the Roman, I guess you could say, occupation of Eretz Israel. And 3 Romans were talking about the accomplishments of the 3 Jews were talking about the accomplishments of the Roman Empire and how they were so skilled at building bridges and roads and inventions of sewerage and water piping and all these sophisticated things. And one of the rabbis said everything, and it might have been Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, everything that the Romans did, they did for their own purposes and only to make war. And so that it should be more practical for them to drive along the roads, easier for their chariots. And nothing was done for the good of mankind. It was just done to make their empire bigger and make it easier for their army to travel and to get supplies and things. And I think it might have been Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai who said this, because after it, someone was overhearing the conversation, and there was a what's it called, a prize on his head that he should be killed and executed for treason against the Roman Empire for speaking. It has happened in our past that if you say things that the ruling parties don't like, you could be punished. So it's happening again. Who would think in 2022, if you say things that aren't approved upon, you could be cancelled. So this was their form of cancel culture. He would be executed. And so he ran away. And we know that he ran away. And I know that he spent many times many years, 12 years in a cave where the secrets of the Zohar were revealed to him. But according to Sarah, he was actually hiding out in Meron, and that's where he received his downloads of information while he was hiding. So not only is he buried in Meron, but he was actually hiding, I guess the cave was in Meron. So I have to double check that because I don't remember it before that it was in Meron, but she says that he got his information and is buried in Meron. Now, everything about Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai being in Meron and getting these downloads of information fits in quite well with everything that is the identity of, she calls them the Naftalis, the people born in the month of Adar, because the tribe of the month of Adar is Naftali. Now, how did Naftali come to be? Because each of the 12 tribes, it's a story. And we know that we had two women, we had Rachel and we had Leah. And 12 tribes had to come down. And Yaakov, and there's lots of different theories, right? If Esav would have done tshuva, or if Esav would have been a righteous person, or if Leah would have married Esav and makarived him somehow. There was some plan at some point in time that Esav might have had 6 of the tribes, and Yaakov would have 6 of the tribe. And Leah would be married to Esav, and Rachel would be married to Yaakov. But things didn't go that way. Rivka intervened. Yaakov got the blessings. Esav wanted to kill Yaakov. Rivka didn't feel Esav was a vessel to receive the blessings from their father. Yaakov runs away. Esav is kind of doing his own thing. He's completely not in the family enterprise in terms of spirituality. And so all of the tribes now are going to come through Yaakov, and there's 2 women, Rachel and Leah, but for some reason, Rachel's womb doesn't open very easily or till pretty late in the game. So each of these women, Rachel and Leah, have maidservants, Bila and Zilpah, who are half sisters to Rachel and Leah. So, and who's their father? They all have the same father, being Lavan, but they have different mothers, the midwives from Rachel and Leah. So Rachel is not having any children, and Leah's having more and more children, until finally Rachel, in a great act of desperation, she suggests that her maidservant Bila should step in and be like not just a surrogate mother in the way we have surrogate mothers, carrying a baby that was fertilized or comes from the egg of a different mother, but that Bila should actually get impregnated from Yaakov, and the baby would really be Rachel's, or come through Rachel, or because Bila's Rachel's maidservant, this child will be in a way like Rachel's child. So Bila actually has 2 sons, and the second one of them is Naftali. Now there's interesting quotes connected with his name. One, Rachel said when she named him, "With great wrestling have I wrestled with my sister, and I prevailed." And his name is Naftali. So in this sort of competition that Leah shouldn't have all the 12 tribes, Rachel says, "Oh, I'm not able to have babies myself, but maybe my maidservant in my name will be able to have." And she names him that. She sort of wrestled with her sister. Another interpretation of this wrestling is that the wrestling is really prayer, and that connected with Naftali's this ability or this capacity or this connection to prayer. And we're going to see that that really comes through everything about the holidays in this month and everything about the identity of this month, because this month is a connection between heaven and earth in a way, prayerfulness, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai being buried in Meron, Meron being this place of connection of heaven and earth, so to speak. So when Naftali was given his blessings by his father, one of the things it was said, Naftali is a hind, like a deer, let loose, he gives goodly words. And there's an idea that people born in the time of Naftali, the month of Naftali, Adar, that the people are messengers, and they sent forth to kind of impart messages into the world. And Naftali was connected or compared to a deer, that a deer jumps through, you know, if you see a deer in Rockland County, we see many, many deers, lots and lots of deers. If you startle them, or in the old days, if you startle them, they don't get startled anymore. They're so used to it. But if you startled them in the old days, they would kind of run very quickly and have a sure-footedness about them. And it's interesting because the month of Adar is a month where if you were a deer and you were startled, you would kind of run. I see, yeah, Karina, yes. You would kind of run. If you were a deer, you would kind of run without thinking too much, like just an intuitive run, an intuitive bolt. And there's something about the energy of Naftali, which is the good side of not thinking too much and just being open to the flow of divine providence and divine guidance. So there's a quality of Naftali to receive instruction, to be open to receive instruction and advice without ego, but not to be so open that one doesn't have a sense of self. But the goal is to find divine connection, to tune into the cosmos, to kind of the striving to be attached above while refraining from trying to control that of which we have no control. This is the essence of Naftali. And it's interesting because the holiday of Adar, the main holiday of Adar is, which holiday do we have? Purim, right? So what's the trick? What's the thing about Purim? So it's not a superficial thing, but the thing about Purim is that we drink. We drink so that we don't know the difference between blessing Mordechai and cursing Haman, or blessing Haman and cursing Mordechai. But really there's a deep spiritual aspect to it, because if we go back to Gan Eden and we think of the sin that was perpetrated in Gan Eden, the sin is called the sin from eating from the tree Eitz Hada'as Tov V'Ra, eating from the tree of knowledge of good and bad. And this knowledge of good and bad is a very tricky thing, because the knowledge of good and bad comes from one's intellect and one's ability or disability of making judgments, of all the time saying good, bad, right, wrong, good, bad, right, wrong. I like you, I don't like you. I'm thinking, I'm always in my head. And on Purim, we drink to get beyond the head. It's a beyond the mind kind of holiday. It's like above the limitations of conscious thought, which in a way can have a very low aspect, and in another way can have a very high aspect. So when we get beyond the thinking mind, we can kind of enter into just like, I'm just being with God, I'm just being with what is, I'm just going with the flow. I'm not constantly trying to judge, evaluate, control, direct things. I'm just receiving the hashpoah, the effluence of God's blessing, and I'm kind of flowing with it without so much ego. And that's the energy of Naftali, to receive what's above and flow and kind of move through and be in oneness with God without asserting the control of the brain. And that's kind of a life challenge, to be in that place where we with Hashem, we taking divine guidance. We haven't lost ourselves. We're not vulnerable to being led into bad places by some bad mashpia, rabbi, teacher. That's the danger of this. So we discerning in that way to not be led by something that's not holy. But if we can align to good teachers and, align to Hashem, this capacity of put your mind a little bit quiet and just allow yourself to be guided and in tune and in sync. That's the Naftali challenge. Now it's interesting because what can get in the way of that? So I'm going to ask you, as people sitting quietly listening, what can get in the way of us listening to the signs, the guidance, the hashpoa, the influence, what can get in the way of us flowing in this way with God, with the universe, with reality? What can get in the way of that? Anyone want to suggest to me some problems with that approach, or what can make it difficult?
The things that the outside things, I think that a lot of people or us consider important, that we hold as like almost like idols.
Okay, definitely.
Like money.
The idols. So we feel intuitively we should go left, but if we go right, there's some shiny prizes or something distracting and compelling, whether it's money or something of a less holy nature. So we kind of veer to the wrong side. What else can pollute the flow? What else can pollute the flow?
I would say too much self-reliance, when we're just used to sort of being like the Marlboro man and everything's on our own shoulders and we have to solve all the problems by ourselves, and we're just, you know, and also control, the need to control everything.
Yeah, I like both of those suggestions. So the need to control, the need to take everything on our own shoulders. You know, we believe in a God, but we don't really leave it to God. We believe in a God, but we have to always be on the ball and control things. So that's for sure can get in the way. There's one particular obstacle that gets in the way. That's
you did everything yourself?
Sorry?
Thinking it's all done by you and not
with
God?
Yes, so that's connected to what Yaakov says in a way. We believe in God, but we don't leave it to God. We feel like we have to do. But there's another factor.
How about noise, like influences from the outside that confuse you or influence you?
Yes, and I think what Sandra said about, you know, we have other agendas or other ideas that can be contradictory to that. And like Susan says, we take guidance. Sometimes it's kind of, this is the Naftali balance to, there's the idols, the golden calves of the things outside that can be interference. On the other hand, the guidance that comes from Hashem and comes from good teachers and good mentors, we need to be open to that. So it's kind of this like balancing act. So what challenges, the thing that Nechama Sarah brings, which I think is a really great connection and way of bringing this idea in, is that the thing that in a way breaks the flow, that makes it difficult for us to be in this kind of nice, smooth, deer-like, you know, jumping through the mountains, sure-footed, having a speed and a sure-footedness. What gets in the way is self-doubt. And it turns out that self-doubt, the word safek, right? Sandra knows what I'm going to say. Safek, which is doubt in Hebrew, has the same numerical value as the Hebrew word for Amalek. Amalek being this power, this energy that came into the world in the form of a tribe that attacked us in the desert. Right after we had just crossed the Red Sea, we were all excited that God had intervened and our enemies were caught as we cleared through the Red Sea and we were on the other side. Pharaoh and all his chariots and their very gilded and laden with jewels chariots ran after us, and the walls of the Red Sea went up like two straight walls, very impressive. And as we were safely on the other side and the Egyptian army was all in the middle, the walls of water collapsed and all of the Egyptian army was annihilated or drowned, I should say, except for Pharaoh. We know he has a miraculous escape and he runs off and becomes the king of Nineveh in a different story. But the Jewish people were really euphoric. God intervened in a very graphic and dramatic way, and the whole world, every nation of the world, we know Yitro heard about it because we know that he came to be with the Jews at Har Sinai, and one of the reasons why he came is he heard what happened at the splitting of the Red Sea. He heard Kriyas Yamsuf. He was in Midian, but he heard about it. Some Meforshim said that every water in every part, in every place worldwide split when the sea split. It was a big news. Everybody knew about it. And everybody knew that Hashem had intervened on behalf of the Jewish people. And so most people, most nations, most kings, most armies would say, wow, God is really protecting the Jewish people. We should leave them alone. They got protexia. They protected, guarded. God is in their pocket. We should leave them alone. And Amalek says exactly the opposite. Amalek says, I don't care about this godly protection. I don't care that the Jews just got out of Egypt. Never happens that slaves leave an oppressive society, that God intervened and split the Red Sea, that the whole Egyptian army was decimated. We don't care. We don't care. We're not intimidated. We're attacking the Jews. And this aspect, it's personified by the nation of Amalek, but it has a psychological counterpart that is this word Safek, has the same numerical value as Amalek. Safek is doubt. And doubt is the thing that I'm a Naftali person and I'm going in my Naftali flow and I'm getting guidance and I'm feeling I'm in my flow with God and I'm being, guided down the river of life. And then I start thinking, hang on, this is all wrong. Why am I going left? A million signs are suggesting that I should go left, but maybe I should go right. Maybe those signs are not really there. Maybe I'm not, my intuition is wrong. Maybe I'm supposed to doubt myself. Maybe, that's one form of Amalek's doubt, the doubt of Amalek. And the other form of the doubt of Amalek is, I got up this morning and I davened and I learned Torah and I feel so connected to Hashem and I feel I'm in sync. And then the Amalek voice comes and says, why do you think your prayers matter? Why do you think anyone cares that you pray to God? Why do you think God cares about you? Why do you think that anything you do makes a difference in this world? Very powerful enemy of flow and of trust and of the Naftali energy, very powerful antidote to that. So Amalek is the doubt factor. And it obstructs our ability to move forward gracefully. Amalek is the psychic force that causes us to doubt our direction, doubt our purpose, to hesitate, and to slip and to fall. If you're running down a mountain, and this is what Nechama Sarah says in her book, she was hiking in the Meron area, and there was quite a steep hill and a lot of rocks. And I've experienced this as well, because recently I've become a hiker. So when you're going down, what? Yeah, so it's my new excitement. I even got myself a fancy backpack and now I have pressure. I have to go somewhere and use that backpack. So when you're going downhill, if you don't go fast, you can really hurt yourself because you kind of want to just keep going. And if it's got a lot of rocks and it's kind of steep, you stumble more if you're constantly stopping and holding yourself back. If you can just kind of let yourself go and run down the hill, you'll in a way have an easier time. That's also what happens with me if I try skiing. I get so terrified when I'm going fast down the hill that I think I have to stop myself, otherwise I'm going to fall and then I make myself fall. If I would just trust that I'm going fine and I'm actually know what I'm doing. So that's a great Amalek thing, because it's complete fear and doubt. I will fall, so I must make myself fall because I'm going too fast down the hill. Or when you're on a path with, it's a little bit downhill, if you just keep going, you'll probably have an easier time than if you stop, and you could actually misstep, because we have a certain instinct, which when we're constantly doubting ourselves, kind of doesn't work in our benefit. So this Naftali aspect, we want to be able to run and be in tune with the divine will. And so to destroy Amalek, sorry, well, I thought I usually put it on do not disturb. So to destroy Amalek, we have to destroy the thoughts that destroy our confidence and doubt the level of divine providence that paradoxically coexists with our free choice in every situation. So God is protecting us, God is with us, and when we're constantly doubting that, that's the Amalek factor. And it's actually a positive mitzvah on Purim, and not only on Purim, actually, it's positive mitzvah that is applying every day to destroy Amalek, to destroy Amalek. So Amalek is the actual nation that hated us so much, that wanted our downfall and wasn't intimidated by our rescue from Egypt. Amalek is people in today's world that hate Jews for no reason and have a pathological desire to destroy us for no rational reason. It's a mitzvah to destroy that energy in the world. And then
That's what Linda does on the computer.
Say again?
That's what Linda does on the computer.
Yes, Linda's. Yay, Linda.
Yay, Linda. Linda's our voice.
She's a warrior on the forefront. And at the same time, we've got to destroy the psychological Amalek that comes into our own consciousness and makes us doubt ourselves. So I have a question for you. Oh, so I kind of asked you, well, I asked you before, what do you think gets in the flow? But if I asked you a question again, a different question, slightly different, what do you think is your Amalek factor? Because apparently you can't destroy it if you don't recognize it and you don't know how it's showing up for you. So I don't know if anyone has immediate clarity of what is where their Amalek factor shows up, because it's different. It's a different question than what breaks your flow to the specific doubting, this cold. And also there's a coldness, because when we encountered Amalek in the Torah, it says, and they happened upon Amalek. And Amalek, the wording of the pasuk is that he encountered them, but the same word of encountering is kind of a cooling off. So there's a coldness of Amalek, like you're so excited, you're so enthusiastic, you went on this beautiful program, you learned these beautiful things, you're all enthused, you're all bubbling and excited, and Amalek wants to cool you off, wants to take away your excitement and your enthusiasm. So if I give you a couple moments to just think, where do you see, or how would you define, or how has it been for you in your own private personal experience? And you don't have to share if you feel like you don't want to share, because
Yeah, I wrote mine down.
oh, you're right. So yeah, so write them down for yourself. If you not happy, you don't have to share. So
I just want to comment, Bracha. I think that's amazing that you're asking such a thing.
Yeah.
I'm at work, I can't do it, but it's just great. It's just great.
oh, good.
And I'm going to remute.
Okay, well, welcome to the class. I know you came in late, but we're happy to have you. So, so have it in mind and have it as a meditation that unless you unless you know what your Amalek is and you kind of get a little bit curious as to how it shows up. You know, one thing is if you're doing mitzvahs and you're getting a certain good, positive thing from a mitzvah, that voice that says, well, you didn't do it better, or you didn't do all the mitzvahs, so, you know, you're a hypocrite, or don't think so much of yourself because, you know, your little mitzvah doesn't have that much worth, or any kind of downplaying of your connection to Hashem that maybe starts going off in your mind. You have to be alert and say, there it is. There's the Amalek factor, and I got to annihilate that. I got to get it out of my psyche and get it out of my being. So that's why in Purim, when we listen to the story of Purim and the story about Haman, obviously Haman is the quintessential Amalek character. And we want to destroy anything, so much so that when his whole name is said, we bang and we want to just annihilate his name, that it shouldn't even be heard. That's getting rid of Haman. So the Purim story is giving a lot of testimony to that idea, because Haman, for some reason, he just hated all of us and wanted every woman, man, and child destroyed in 127 states. That was his rule, was 127 states, which basically was the whole world. And he got a decree approved that every Jewish man, woman, and child would be annihilated. So total genocide. So even though Purim is a very happy holiday and people think of it, it's just dressing up and dancing and celebrating, really we averted a total genocide of our people. So.
Well, that's something to celebrate.
Sorry?
That's something to celebrate.
Yeah, that's something to celebrate. And it makes, it's also worthwhile to talk about Esther. Esther also, I think I just want to double check, because I think I remember last year learning that her birthday was also on Zion.
You're right. I think I also just read that also.
Yes, so I think so. It's her birthday today. I'm just double checking on my phone. And, you know, Esther, just to see, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I think we can assume that if Sandra, if you remembered it, and if I remembered it, that it's probably true.
Yeah, I think I actually read it very in one of the, I don't know if I read it in the press or the Muncie bus or something. I could swear, I'm almost convinced it was one of those articles.
So if Esther, you know, we know that she walked into the king Ahasuerus's, you know, quarters and surrounded by a lot of idols and demonic forces, and she had to hold very, you know, committedly to the idea that God would protect her when she approached Ahasuerus. And if she would have been attacked by Amalek, Safek, doubt in her process, she wouldn't have been able to do it. She had to be very clear-headed and really allow herself to be held by Hashem. She was very, very brave lady. So one more thing to say about Adar, that each month we know it's connected to an energy. So we know that we've spoken about this one, at least, that the energy of the month of Adar, the way we accomplish our work, our spiritual work, is through joy. The area of healing, joy, and laughter. Astrological sign is Pisces, the tribe is Naftali, the holiday is Purim. The Hebrew letter is the letter Kuf. And the letter Kuf, it's kind of got a resh and then a line going all the way down. So it's an interesting letter. And again, the letter connects to the holiday of Purim, and the month of Adar is connected to the essence of this letter, because apart from the end letters, the Ender Fe and Ender Pei and the Ender Tzadik and the Ender Chaf, it's the only letter that has a leg going all the way. Like if you were practicing your letters and you had 3 lines, so all the letters occur in the middle line, and then the lamed it goes up to the top line, and some of the end letters go down to the bottom line. And the kuf goes down, even though it's not an end letter. And one of the things that we can learn from this and contemplate from this is the whole meaning of Purim. Because the first time we see the letter kuf in the Torah, it's connected to the word kadosh, which means holy, which means separate and holy. Now, kadosh, we have kiddush. Kadosh means holy and separate, but connected to the word kadosh, we have the word kiddush, which is to make sanctified and to make holy the Shabbos. We have a kedushin, which is to separate and to make holy the marriage of this man to this wife. Yaakova wants to know if anyone else is experiencing freeze-ups. I had one little freeze-up, but I think the rest we good. I think it might just be you, Yaakova. So Kiddush, we separating and sanctifying 1/7 of the week and calling it Shabbos. Kedushin, we separating, this man is doing a ceremony that he is going to be separate with this woman, and they're only going to be with each other, and they're separating from all the other available men and women so that they can be separate and holy just in their own little bubble of monogamy. So that's Kedushin. And then Kaddish, we say when a person, I guess, is being separated from the world, but to make it a holy way of separating, I guess. There's actually an interesting fourth word, which I don't understand its connection right now. I might not even say it because I don't know how it fits in, but it's very interesting because a lot of times in Torah, we have this unbelievable presence of paradox in everything we do and we say. There's always like a flip side to everything. So the numerical value of Mashiach is the same as the numerical value as Nachash, the snake. And we have a lot of things where you would, the absolute opposite. So we got Kiddush, Kedusha, Kaddish, and we also ironically have Kadesha, which is a prostitute. Now, I don't really know right now what that's doing there, but it is there. And I know someone has a shir on it, and I can't remember the punchline of the shir, but that is just a interesting place that if you don't have Kedusha and you go a little wrong, then you get Kadesha. Like it's the opposite. It's kind of two sides of it. You know, they say the world is a very narrow bridge. So you're walking on, with sexuality, you're walking on the edge of a sword. If you go this way, it's Kedusha, and if you go that way, God forbid, it's Kadesha. So maybe that's why. But anyway, the letter Kuf goes down into the lower realm, but it means, and it's the word used, and the first time it's used is for Kadosh, Kedusha, holiness. So the lesson of that is the lesson of Purim, that in elevating the physical world, we actually get the greatest level of holiness. That the Jewish version of holiness is not leaving out the lower realms. It's engaging with the lower realms to raise them and permeate them with holiness. That's why Yom Kippur, when we don't eat and we don't drink and we're fasting all the time and we're all in white, we don't have relations, and we basically spend most of the day in prayer. The holiness of Yom Kippur is like the day of Yom Kippur is the day that's like Purim.
Purim.
It's so holy. Yom Kippur is so holy, it's like Purim. So Purim, we're drinking and we're eating and we're elevating the holiness of the physical world, our connections with other people, we're giving gifts, we're sharing, we're drinking, we're jumping, we're laughing. And on Yom Kippur, we can be as holy as that without eating and drinking. But the actual original holiness is Purim, not Yom Kippur. So we see this in the letter of the Kuf, where the letter goes all the way down. only letter other than the end letters that actually go down, and it's the letter connected to holiness and bringing holiness down. And now, when we have 10 minutes left of the shir,
Yeah.
I will tell you the name of the parsha. So the name of this week's parsha is Vayikra. And he called. And who called? Hashem called to Moshe. And Hashem spoke to Moshe in the tent of meeting, saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when a person from among you will bring an offering to Hashem from the animals, from the cattle, and from the flocks, you shall bring your offering. So when a person brings, so basically it's introducing a whole new topic, which we will talk about in the coming weeks. But basically the name of the parsha is the same as the name of the whole new book, the third book of the 5 books, Vayikra, and he called, and it's referring to Hashem's voice calling to Moshe from inside this. We spoke about the building of the Mishkan, the building. Now it's built. We know that Moshe erected it and it took it down, erected it and took it down, erected it and took it down, until finally he erected it, it stayed up. They offered sacrifices and a holy fire came down and consumed the sacrifices, and basically then the Mishkan is declared open for business. And what is the business? It's that the Jewish people will engage and connect with Hashem through a process of sacrifices. And so the sacrifices of the whole book of Vayikra are all different ways that people made efforts to connect to Hashem, whether they did something wrong and they wanted to say sorry, whether they were feeling so grateful and they wanted to say thank you, whether they were just participating in the daily ritual of an everyday kind of sacrifice, that the Mishkan becomes the portal, the gateway for this transaction of the Jewish people bring forth an offering, and the idea of mikem, from within them, they offer from within them. It's not just the animal that's representing an intention that they have, but they're putting their own being and their own inner intention together with this animal and offering this animal for a multitude of different reasons, which we'll go into, but not tonight. And this practice of offering up these sacrifices becomes the connection point of the effort and the inclination and the desire of the Jewish people to connect with Hashem or thank Hashem or ask for forgiveness from Hashem, and a response from God above, who sort of received these sacrifices. And in this idea of the sacrificing and the bringing and the offering becomes an opportunity and a vehicle for the connection and the communication and the relationship between the people below and God above. And now that we don't have a temple or a Mishkan, so a lot of the details of the temple and Mishkan sacrifices get translated and become the basis for our prayer, sacrifice, our prayer, not sacrifices, but our prayer, the details of our prayer. And they offered a morning sacrifice and an afternoon sacrifice. So we have a morning service and an afternoon service. They didn't have an evening service in the temple, but we have an evening service. But we trying to relive some of the accomplishments of those sacrifices in our prayers. And as I've said, when people come for Friday night dinner, not only are the prayers and the synagogue replacing the sacrifices, but our table, and when we sit and bring meat and fish and all our delicacies of Shabbos or a Yom Tov meal, and we're sitting at the table and we prepare for the meal similarly to the Kohanim who washed their hands before they did service in the temple. We kind of recreating some kind of service that is temple-like at our tables. That's why we go to big effort to make them special meals, special tablecloths, special dishes, special foods, so that we bring in that kedusha, that sanctity that was connected. And another word with the kuf is korban, right? To come close, to bring this offering to come close and to connect. So we'll talk more about that in the coming weeks. I just want to share the Hayom Yom for today, which I didn't do, which is, as we said, the 7th of Adar. Walking in the street, one must think words of Torah. Whether he actually pronounces the words depends on the place. If one is permitted, according to Torah law, to utter words of Torah there, if you're in a bathroom, you can't say words of Torah. If you're in a place that's spiritually impure, you can't speak words of Torah, but maybe sometimes you just think them. But when someone goes about not occupied with Torah words, and I love this is why I'm sharing it with you, then the stone he treads on exclaims, bulach, which means kind of idiot or clod in Russian, like peasant person. How dare you trample me? How are you any higher than I? How are you any better than me? Don't walk all over me if you're not saying words of Torah, because when you say words of Torah, you become a person. You're godly, you're holy, you can connect with God. If you're not saying words of Torah, then you don't have the right to walk all over me, because you kind of just a clod yourself. That's my ending point for tonight's class.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
And
happy birthday.
happy to bring a little, if anyone has any questions or comments or wants to share anything else that hasn't been shared.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest things in the world in tefillah is to read the Karbonos and to relate to it. I once went to a shiur, but it was Shabbos, so I couldn't write it down. That was so elevating, but I couldn't hold on to what I learned. But it's hard. It's quite the challenge.
It is
I don't read the Karbonos when I daven.
I mean, neither.
Well, one of the things, if you imagine, and this has always helped me, that I remember learning, and this is just very brief, but the different parts of the different animals were offered as korbanos. There was sheep, there were oxen, there were birds, pigeons, and they correspond in a way to different parts of our own animal soul. So in Hasidus, we learn we have a godly soul and we have an animal soul. So a cow, for example, is very passive. They spend all day chewing their cud and just hanging out in the fields. So there's a certain passivity. A person might do a mistake or an avera because they were just too passive. So there's a connection between the passivity of the cow and something you didn't do. You were just sitting in your pasture chewing your grass. It's like a connection. Or sheep follow blindly without questioning, and they just follow. And maybe you did an avera where you were just blindly following the crowd, or just blindly following some voice in your head, or just blindly following an appetite or something. So there's a part of you that can relate to the sheep. So when you're offering the sheep, you're kind of connecting to that part of you that could just blindly follow. Or an ox is very stubborn, doesn't want to go where it doesn't want to go. Maybe you came to do an avera because you were so stuck in your ways that you couldn't shift to actually do what was right. So there's a part of you that's connected to an ox. Then we know that when people spoke Lashon Hara, something that was used in the korbanos were the birds, because as Rashi says, they twitter. So maybe you've been speaking too much Lashon Hara and you're twittering like a bird. So there's a part of you that the bird represents. So even these animals, they're not removed from us, they kind of personify, the opposite of personifying. They're putting into graphic, animalistic form aspects of us that we're trying to expunge while we going about these processes of repair, you know, using representatives of different parts of ourselves. That's one thing that can maybe be helpful. And another thing, it's interesting that before an animal was offered, it had to be checked. And this is the story of Kamsa, Bar Kamsa, when an animal was given a nick and it was damaged and the Jews couldn't use it. I won't go into that story now. But before an animal is offered as a sacrifice, it has to be checked that it doesn't have any damage, any cuts or anything. And the Alter Rebbe, in the Alter Rebbe's Siddur, we say, before we daven, we say, I'm taking on myself the positive mitzvah of loving another as myself. And in a way, it's like I'm checking myself before I start davening. Do I have any, moons? Do I have any blemishes? Do I have any places where I'm actually holding negative thoughts about another person? So just like they would check the animal before the animal gets sacrificed, I'm checking myself. Do I have any blemish before I kind of put my own self on that altar? Now, what part of you putting on your altar? You're shechting the part of you that's not identifying with God or not in sync with God, or you shechting this Amalek part of yourself. So the same way that they used to go to a Kohen and get an animal to go on the altar, when we stand and pray, we in a way taking our animal self and putting it on the altar and trying to, shecht it so that the other part of us can go ahead and get the job done and be connected to Hashem. So maybe those visualizations can help you and make it a little more relatable in some way. I don't know if that helps. I mean,
Well, yes, very much.
But
I just want to say that there are words that some people don't know. Like the word lashon hara is speaking negatively, and shechting is the kosher killing of an animal to make it kosher to eat.
Yeah. Thank you for those clarifications. Yeah. So, I mean, really, the shechting of the animal soul is a process we have to do every single day. The shechting of the ego, the shechting of the part of ourselves that feel that we're separate from God, the shechting of the part of us that, doesn't want to make the connection. The very act of praying, you have to shecht that kind of lazy part that says, I don't need to do this, or I don't feel like doing this. So I hope that's helpful. We'll talk about it more in the weeks to come. I think the whole book is connected to sacrifices. So we got a few pashiot.
Next week is Purim. Next Wednesday night is Purim.
Yeah, so no class.
Nowhere to go to listen to Megillah.
No class next week. Usually we have a Purim Seudah and we have a Megillah reading in the afternoon, but I don't know what state I'm in. I'm going to make my Purim very small. So I think we will have a Purim Seudah, and we usually have a Purim reading. And just check with me what's going to be the story, because I'm not sure if I'm coming or going. I just came back from California, and a week after Purim, I'm going back to California for the wedding of my son. So I'm a little bit betwixt and between. So check in with me, because usually we do have something. If you don't have a place to hear the Megillah on Thursday, get in touch with me. Usually we have a reading, but if it's, I don't know if I don't know what's happening this year. So just text me. Text me on Wednesday.
Thank you, Bracha.
Thank you so much.
everything.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Bye, everybody.